Wormholes, particle physics, extra dimensions. Are the wonders of so-called reality really what they appear to be? Or do we exist in an elaborate hologram? Is our universe the result of random activity or the result of intelligent design? If a creator was involved, can we discover him through our perception of divine order? This is Into the Multiverse with Josh Peck.
Corn chips taste better than microchips. That is an example of an obvious statement. Welcome,
Yes.
welcome to Into the Multiverse. I'm Josh Peck, and I'm in studio with Christina Peck, my lovely, beautiful, pregnant wife.
I'm so happy that you put that in there. Before we started recording, I said corn chips. No,
It's hard to
I
say
didn't.
corn chips. I almost said
corn
that too.
Chips. Corn chips taste better than microchips. That's an obvious statement.
Yeah. Well, it was good. It was good, so I decided to run with it.
Oh, you're welcome.
You know, I'm going to have to come up with another adjective after we have the baby because I always say my lovely, beautiful, pregnant wife. So I'm not going to...
Unpregnant?
You've been unpregnanted.
Because that's a word.
It can be. It's fine.
It's fine.
We're not a grammar show. We're a Christian and science. Yeah. So no grammar needed here.
Let's make up our own words.
Yeah. Well, physicists do it. Why can't we?
Oh, yeah. No kidding.
Well, today we are going to be talking about the double slit experiment. And do we actually create our own reality? Spoiler alert, no.
Yeah,
we don't.
nope.
That's it. End of episode. No. No, we do not create our own reality, but the double slit experiment is used sometimes as evidence to say that we do.
Evidence.
Yeah, in quotes. Now, before we get into all that, this might be somebody's first time watching. Where can they find us online?
Well, if it is your first time, welcome to Into the Multiverse. You can find us on youtube.com/Into the Multiverse. Go to skywatchtv.com homepage and scroll down and go to the right-hand side. You'll see a picture of Josh and I, and you can click on it. It will bring you right here to our channel, or if you're on Roku, or if you have Roku, check us out on Roku. We are under the Skywatch TV channel right now. So,
Yes.
And we are on Facebook. We are on Twitter.
Yeah, that's what all
We're
those.
everywhere.
That's what all those lower thirds throughout the episode are. They're web addresses to where you can find us online. So
Come on by, leave a comment,
yeah.
do whatever.
Yeah.
Send a message. We reply
We
every
reply.
time.
Yes, we do. So the double slit experiment. Where to begin with this? Well, many, many years ago, when this experiment was first conducted, the basic setup of this experiment is you have an electron gun, essentially. You have something that fires electrons, and you have a screen that has two slits cut out of it, and then another screen where you can see where the electrons hit.
Yeah.
Now, you would think when they're firing these electrons that you would get on the very back screen, you would just see two lines where the electrons pass through the two slits.
Yeah.
It's actually not what we see at all.
No.
We see a lot of lines, which is called an interference pattern. And strangely enough, this even happens if you just fire them off one at a time. You know, you would think, well, maybe it's just because they're firing off a lot of them and it's causing some kind of disruption. But even if you just do one at a time, you still get this weird interference pattern.
Yep.
Now they say, and this is why I'm glad that we're doing an episode like this, because there's a lot of misconceptions around this experiment and a lot of things that are said to kind of embellish what's really going on. I've even heard... I forget what show it was, but there was a science show where they were talking about it, and they said, basically, but when they set up a detector, they said when somebody looked at the experiment, you would get the two lines again without the interference pattern. So consciousness,
Consciousness affects it, right?
Yeah,
no.
and that's not exactly what's going on there.
It knows you're looking at it, so it changes.
Yeah, well, and the truth is that's not what's going on, basically. And that's the topic of this show. Actually, something, while we're on the topic of electrons, something that you brought up
Yeah.
that we both known about for a while, and you can't actually really touch anything because of electrons.
Yes, they repel each other.
Yeah,
This
well-
is so cool.
Well, yeah, what you think, okay, we as human beings and really all of known matter in the universe is made up of atoms. And, there's different types of atoms and different particles and things. But what an atom is you have the atomic nucleus, which is just protons and neutrons popping in and out of existence. But then you have what's called an electron probability cloud. A lot of times we tend to think of an electron as orbiting the nucleus, which essentially it sort of does, but that's not exactly right. It's more of like a cloud of probability where the electron might be, because we can't.
Oh, back to quantum tunneling, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah, because we can't know exactly where the so it's kind of like this cloud, like a shell.
Yeah.
But electrons have the same charge.
Yes.
Which means, and every atom has at least one electron. Every atom has electrons. So what's happening when you think that you're touching something, like if you put your hands together,
Yeah.
your right hand is not touching your left hand. The electrons in your right hand are repelling the electrons from your left hand.
And that's where you can
That's
in
where
a
you
sense,
get-
like feel
Yeah,
the
you get-
different textures. It's because the way the electrons are repelling each other.
Exactly. That's the sensation of touch. That's
Yep.
what that is.
That's
You're
what that
actually
is.
not touching anything.
Nope, you're spreading those atoms apart,
Mm-hmm.
and depending on how they repel each other,
Mm-hmm.
it depends on what texture you're feeling.
Yeah, there's always a little bit of space between electrons, and
Yep.
that means technically we're always hovering. Even when we walk, we're always hovering. When we're sitting down or laying in bed, we're hovering.
Yep.
A little bit.
Yep.
And it's
enough.
just enough, and it's weird to think about. But we talked about maybe the only way you could really physically touch something is if a quantum tunneling thing happened.
That's right.
If an electron jumped in, or if a proton or quantum tunneled from, like if we were holding hands, or a photon, or
Yeah.
just any part. But like if a proton from the atomic nucleus quantum tunneled out of an atom from my hand and into an atom of your hand, that would be really the only kind of touching. It's still not, but that's like the closest thing that we can really get, and that doesn't happen all too often, but it happens, which is why the sun shines. If you want more information on that, check out the quantum tunneling episode of
Very
Into the
cool
Multiverse.
episode.
Yeah, interesting stuff. But anyway, I'm getting a little off track.
Yeah, this is not about not being able to physically touch anything ever.
But it is cool.
But it is a good example.
So this double slit experiment had shown, and still does show, that actually particles behave more like waves. And the way that we could think of that is, imagine if you did the same experiment, but instead of electrons, you had the sheet that had the two slits. It was half submerged in water, and then you had another sheet at the opposite end. And let's say you were dropping stones. So these waves would ripple out to those two slits, and the two slits would create two separate waves. But because of that, you have places within those two sets of waves that cancel each other out, and you have places that rise up even higher. Well, when that gets to that back sheet and you're able to see, the peaks and the valleys, that's an interference pattern. So essentially, the double slit experiment shows that electrons and particles, because you could do that with other particles too, but they behave as waves, which gets into this thing called wave-particle duality. Now, wave-particle duality is really interesting. Basically, what we can see as humans, or what we can detect just as limited human beings, are particles. But particles aren't the real reality.
Nope.
Actually, particles don't really exist. They're waves, really.
They're waves.
But
Sean Carroll
Sean Carroll, yeah, excellent physicist. He's got a great lecture, a couple different ones on YouTube about this. This goes into quantum field theory, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But yeah, the true reality isn't the particle. A particle is really just a spike of energy in a quantum field. It's a spike in a quantum field. Typically, when we think of a spike, we think of something on a graph that, you got a line and then you got a spike. Well, that's a two-dimensional representation.
Yeah.
If you have that in 3 dimensions, that spike, it goes out everywhere, which is why particles are spherical.
Yes.
So waves are actually the real reality. The particle is the thing that we can see.
Yes. It's kind of like you can take an example of God and Jesus.
Yes. Yes, and I think that God does embed certain aspects of himself into his creation.
Yes.
So that makes sense. If we think about, we know that, no man can see the face of God and survive, basically. If we were to see God face to face, we would be done for,
Can't do it.
But we can see Jesus.
Yes.
The apostles walked with Jesus. So, and Jesus is no less God than God. He's still God.
Yep.
Just like a particle is still reality. It's still, but it's not we're not getting the complete picture because we can't perceive it. We can't accept it. We can comprehend. That's a good word. Yeah, we can't comprehend it. So God was born into a human body. He was Jesus Christ. So we have somebody that we can interact with and relate to and talk with and be face to face and share meals with and all the stuff that is all throughout the Gospels. But before that, if God wanted to do anything like that, there was always these weird workarounds, like the angel of the Lord had to get involved, or all these weird things. So we can kind of think of it like that. And again, I do believe that God embeds aspects of his nature in his own creation. It's really interesting to think about that this what's called wave-particle duality, just basically saying the particle is the thing that we can see and interact with, the wave is the true reality.
Yes.
To me, that just has God's fingerprints all over it.
It is. You can experience the wave, you can hear the wave, or you can feel the wave of whatever kind of wave it is.
Yeah. But the second you try to physically interact with it, it's a particle.
Exactly.
Because that's all that we can perceive. It's not that our consciousness, and we should get into that. Well, actually, before we get into the whole consciousness aspect of it, there are, the reason that it resolves back into a particle sometimes, there are things that actually affect the experiment. When you set up a detector, basically what you're doing is you're setting up a very large collection of particles, a very large collection of waves, really, of fluctuations in quantum fields that's going to affect the one single electron that you're trying to work with. So that's going to affect the experiment, which is why when you set up a detector, you get the 2 lines instead of the interference pattern. Same with if a person is looking.
Yeah.
We're just a big collection of particles. We're a big collection of spikes in different quantum fields. So because of that, it interacts,
Yes.
and it has nothing to do with consciousness. It's just a physical thing. It's like if
Physical interference.
Yeah, it's like how an opera singer can sing, at a certain frequency that'll vibrate glass.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like that. It doesn't mean that the glass is like consciously reacting to. It's just a physical phenomenon.
Yep.
So same thing that we have here. Also, something else. If we want to see something, we need light.
Yep.
But when you're working with something as small as electrons or something on a quantum scale like that, if you're adding light, you're adding photons.
Yes. And that's more interference.
It is, because you're spraying photons down on your
Yes.
experiment. It would be like if you were trying to test a gun, but then you had a sprinkler that just shot bullets all the way down. It would it would affect it.
It would, because the chances of that bullet actually hitting the target are greatly decreased.
Exactly. So of course it's going to resolve into just 2. So there.
I like that.
That's a good analogy.
That's
I'm going to have to use that.
a great example.
But yeah. So I mean, there's reasons why, and it has nothing to do with consciousness.
Nope.
We're going to get more into the New Age aspects of this when we come back right after this.
Many ancient prophets foresaw Abaddon rising from the underworld in this very age. The satanic human sacrifice by CERN employees in front of the god Shiva was called parody. But all occult masters understand that symbolism was a powerful invitation for a doorway to be opened at CERN.
The secret origins of CERN are nefarious to the core.
Sergio Bertolucci, the science director at CERN, admits that they're trying to open a doorway to a parallel reality, and they hope that something, unknown unknowns he calls them, will come through it. And CERN was built right over Apalliacom, where the ancients believed the doorway to Abaddon and the bottomless pit exists.
Is the bottomless pit from Revelation chapter 9 about to open? The biggest and most secretive investigation ever is set to be published, disclosing what no report has done before in Abaddon Ascending.
Technology today is being developed so that we can communicate with extra-dimensional entities.
The ancient conspiracy at the center of CERN's most secretive mission. But how will God's people, the remnant, prevail over the principalities of darkness during the final showdown between heaven and hell? Though hell may have its directive, heaven has its imperative. Increasing evidence from around the globe of miracles, healings, and prophetic visions indicate that God is already raising up an army of believers for the greatest awakening yet. Coming this December, internationally acclaimed best-selling authors and researchers Dr. Thomas Horn, author and researcher of quantum physics Josh Peck, college president Dr. Michael Lake, investigative researcher Reverend Donna Howell, and the host of Southwest Radio Ministries, Dr. Larry Spargimino. A research finale so huge and important it had to be published in a new 3-book collection. Abaddon Ascending. The ancient conspiracy at the center of CERN's most secretive mission. The Sheerith Imperative. Empowering the remnant to overcome the gates of hell.
He always has a plan. He's playing chess while the devil's playing checkers.
Final Fire. Is the next great awakening right around the corner?
There are signs all around the world right now that we are on the cusp of the next great spiritual awakening.
There is revival breaking out now where there has never been the faith.
This 3-book collection available December 6, 2016. For more details, log on to skywatchtv.com.
Welcome back. Now, before the break, we talked a little bit about, or just briefly mentioned, that New Age theology has grabbed on to this whole thing, this
they
double slit
would,
thing.
too.
Well, yeah, because a lot of New Age theology is based around you're essentially your own God. You know,
Yeah.
it's Gnostic.
Become enlightened and
Yeah.
ascension and
You create, and a big part of certain New Age theologies is that we can create our own reality, essentially. So, of course, when this double slit experiment came out years and years and years ago, it got misinterpreted, which goes back to something we've talked about on the show, the difference between observation and interpretation. Basically, you can have two people observe the same thing and interpret it differently.
yes.
That doesn't mean the first thing is wrong or that we throw the first thing away. It's just they interpret it differently. So, and you know, if we're being honest, we do this as Christians.
Everybody does it with everything.
Yeah. it's a human nature
I
thing.
was just going to say, it's human nature, dude. Everybody does it.
Everybody does it, but it's especially true in science and again Christianity, because you can have 5 different people look at one Bible verse and come up with 5 different entire theologies.
Yes.
So
Oh, goodness, yes.
Yeah. So, but we see that in science, and a good example is I've heard a physicist that I like say that quantum field theory proves there's no afterlife because there's no quantum field to take the information anywhere.
That's just his interpretation.
That's his interpretation of quantum field theory. It doesn't mean that quantum field theory is wrong.
Nope.
quantum field theory doesn't prove that. That's the
No,
thing.
That's just his interpretation
that's
of
his-
how he rationalizes
Yeah.
his findings.
Exactly.
well.
And they're wrong.
Yep.
I would prefer somebody say my opinion is, or according to my view, this doesn't have the evidence. But really, it doesn't mean that we have to throw the observation away. That's the main thing to take away from this, is that, like, just because some New Agers and Gnostics have taken something like the double slit experiment and have tried to turn it into something that's anti-God and anti-Christ and
Yeah.
all this stuff, it doesn't mean that we have to throw the double slit experiment away.
No.
We can keep the observation and
Because
create...
it clearly happens.
Yeah, it happens. So we can create a new interpretation that better fits not only the scientific evidence but the Bible. That
Yeah.
because we put God first, and
Yep.
as much as we love science and quantum physics, we always put God first.
Yep.
So we're allowed to do that. Everybody else does it, and we're going to do it anyway. So we may as well
So
just own
ha-ha.
it. Yeah, we may as well just own it. But yeah, so it again, it has nothing to do with consciousness. It doesn't have anything to do with us creating our own reality. We can't do that.
No.
We don't have control over that. It's just when you're working with things on a quantum scale, any little fluctuation or any little anything disturbance will affect the experiment. So
Yep.
just us being physically put together the way we are is going to just affect it.
Yeah, because we give off constantly.
You could have a lump of dirt there, and it would do the same thing.
Yeah.
You could have a tree or something. You could have something that's not conscious at all. You could have a.
You know how an echo happens? The closer you are to something, you won't really hear it, but when further back, there we go. More interference. It's in everything.
Yeah, it's interference. That's a good way to put it. That's what it is. So it has nothing to do with consciousness. Now, this does get into quantum field theory, which we'll have to fly through. One of these days, I think we're going to have to do an entire episode on quantum field theory.
More. We've touched on it briefly.
We've touched on it. We've talked about it here and there. But I do think the key to learning a lot of this stuff and understanding it is repetition. So I don't mind going over it, a few different times in a few different ways. I don't want to be a repetitive show, but we've talked about it before.
It all melds together.
It melds together. Now, quantum field theory is actually the most accurate and testable scientific theory ever. Ever. It's mathematically sound. I mean,
Yes.
it's more accurate than any other scientific theory or anything put forth.
It's how the LHC works.
Exactly. If quantum field theory wasn't true, if it was just particles and it wasn't quantum fields, which a quantum field is just something that can... I don't really know a good way to describe what a field is. It's something that permeates all points in space, and when there's an energy fluctuation in a field, that's what a particle is. The particle is the fluctuation. But if it wasn't that, if it was just particles, the LHC wouldn't work.
Right.
Because it collides protons to create new unknown particles, like, say, a Higgs boson.
Right.
And it's not that the parts of the Higgs boson are in the proton somewhere, and when you collide them, they come together. It's not that at all. Because a proton and a Higgs boson are completely different
That's
particles.
right. Exactly.
What's happening is the energy from that collision is going into other waves that take up or other fields, I should
Fields,
say,
yeah.
that take up the same space. And if you send enough energy into the right quantum field, maybe an unknown quantum field like the Higgs field was prior to 2012, then you can detect a new particle.
More interference.
More interference. That's what it is. They're utilizing interference to get results that they're looking for. Now, of course, there's a lot that we could go into with quantum field theory, but there's not time. But it does go back to the discussion that we've had many times on the show about how important it is to do diligent research into this, not just buy into we can create our own reality or buy into, you got to actually research it.
Yeah. Yep. And you're absolutely right. Again, going from the most skeptical to the most, I would say gullible. I don't really like the word gullible,
Right.
but, you just go to both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And then you can find a good, sound
Middle
proof
ground.
of middle ground,
Yeah.
and the proof will be right there
Yeah.
in your interpretation.
Yeah,
But
and of course, again, we base our interpretations on the Bible
Yeah.
first, but science can aid in that.
Yes.
And just like our Christianity can aid in science, which I mean, we need more Christian physicists and
we do.
scientists and things like that out there. But it can aid in that as well. Now, we don't have a whole lot of time. I do want to make you aware at home of some exciting products that we have. If you're interested in these types of things, you can check out my 2 books, Quantum Creation and Cherubim Chariots. Right now, you can go to skywatchtvstore.com or call the number on your screen, and you can get those for $29.95, which is a $40 value. So it's a great deal, both my books. Check them out. It explains a lot of this stuff deeper than we're able to really do in one episode of Into the Multiverse.
we only have 28 minutes.
Exactly. We only have 28 minutes to work with. Now, we only have like a minute left, if even that. But I do want to make sure people know at home that if things like quantum field theory, or if this isn't making any sense right now, that's okay. You remember when I was first studying quantum field theory and trying to get my head around it, it was frustrating because
Yes.
I couldn't get a handle on it
Right.
because we are preconditioned to look at the world as particles.
Yes.
And once we're able to kind of shed that aside and start looking at the world in terms of fields,
Yep.
it makes more sense.
Yep.
So I just want people at home to know it's nothing you have to be afraid of. If you're interested in it, keep with it, and it'll start making more
If you don't
sense.
see it, you can still believe it.
Yeah, check out Sean Carroll stuff on YouTube. Now this is just purely scientific. I wouldn't get any kind of Christian anything from him, but scientifically, he has some of the best
He
explanations I've ever
does.
heard.
I really do like hearing him, and hearing what he has to say. Like his example with the particles. Like, guess what? They really don't
Yeah.
exist. It's more like waves and fields,
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, exactly.
And, okay. So that's the interference part. Got
Yeah,
it.
exactly. If people want to find us online, where can they go?
Okay, again, youtube.com/into the multiverse, or go to skywatchtv.com, scroll down on the right hand side, click on that picture. It takes you right to the YouTube channel. Or if you have Roku, check us out on Roku under the Skywatch TV channel.
Indeed. Well, that is it for this episode of Into the Multiverse. If you have any questions or comments, show suggestions, you can email me at jpeck@skywatchtv.com. I'll be happy to read your email. We're not always able to get to reply to every single one, but we do our best.
We do.
So, but
Most
we do,
of the time we do.
Most of the time we do,
reply
but
to everything.
we do get them. So make sure to send those our way. Well, thank you all so much for joining us again into the multiverse. Until next time, take care and God bless.